All right, Filip, let us know who you are, what you do, my friend.
Hey everybody, Filip here. I'm Polish, living in Mexico. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Move Partners. We help B2B tech companies build outbound sales engines. I have around 15 SDRs here sitting in Mexico. And yeah, I see a lot of pitches and a lot of startups at the same time. We usually work with 10 to 15 clients at the same time. So yeah, happy to help here and whatever you need.
Awesome. Jack.
I am jealous of the Mexico. I'm in Massachusetts, so it is like fully fall. It's nice and cold. I just had to take the hoodie off. But my Bruce Wayne, as I call it, is I'm an enterprise AE for Seismic. We're a sales enablement platform for enterprise and mid-market companies. And then my Batman is doing some sales training, coaching, and some VP for hire work for startups and SMBs. So I've been on here before, so I love giving feedback and helping people to hone their craft because I believe that sales is really a noble profession. So happy to be here.
Super. Elaine.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elaine. I am a mid-market SDR at Gong, and Gong is a revenue intelligence platform. Long story short, we basically help salespeople be more efficient and better at selling. And we give them visibility into all of their customer-facing interactions. This is my first time being here, so really happy to meet you all, and looking forward to learning from everyone. So thanks for having me.
I'll do a quick intro before I hand it over to Mikai. I'm a Gong user and fan. I'll take a little bit of what Filip said. I'm a Canadian in Canada, so I'm not as exotic as like someone from somewhere else, and also wish I was in Mexico. And I love the Bruce Wayne Batman analogy. So my Bruce Wayne, I guess, is I sell probably upper mid-market for a Microsoft partner called Encore. And then I guess my Batman is this. Yeah, I love giving feedback, and I always think I can get better. I learn just as much on these. So Mikai, who knows, maybe you'll be coaching all of us.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really, really excited to be here. Full transparency, I actually found out about this group through Us in Technology, which is a group that I'm a part of.
Yeah, give them a plug for sure.
Yeah, Kendrick Trotter, Us in Technology is a community of people who are helping underrepresented groups get into the tech industry. So it's fast growing. We're doing seed funding right now. So yeah, we need all the marketing that we can get. But right now I am an SDR for Ethena. So we are an inclusive compliance training platform. And I know as soon as I said that, you probably just like zoned out. But you can think about this compliance training, like honestly, like Netflix, and Netflix is one of our, biggest clients, but it is really, modern. It's like comic book, The Morning Brew, like just nothing you've ever experienced before when you're learning about things like harassment prevention or anti-bribery and corruption. So it's been really, really enjoyable and fun to work there, especially because as a woman of color, I do have a stake in DEI, just like the DEI ethos. So our training is very like DEI based. So I feel great going to sleep every night, like selling this product. But yeah, I guess to just kind of like kick things off, and I do want to share just a little bit about my role so that y'all have like some context into why I'm looking to learn about the buyer decision-making process and upselling. I was actually the first SDR hire at Ethena, which is like really exciting, right? Now we've added 3 more SDRs and 1 more account executive. So our the sales team is about 6 or 7 people, if we include our head of sales. So yeah, I started off selling to anyone. Like, to be honest, like we didn't really have bands or buckets as far as like mid-market, scaling, and enterprise. So I actually started off doing that. And then now I am like specifically focused on mid-market, which is going to be people up to 1,000 like employees. Quota's been doing great, but now we're like adding new courses. So before it was just our CS team who was kind of like upselling, but now it's like, if I call someone and, I've obviously our off the shelf is harassment prevention, like that is what we started with. How do I get them interested in like anti-bribery and corruption training, or our hiring and interviewing training, like all of these kind of other trainings that we have. Because yeah, everyone, if you talk to anyone like in this space, the leaders like people ops and general counsels, they're going to all these different providers to do what we can do for them, like in one space. So I just want to like communicate that value to them, is like, you don't need to go to, I won't name names, but you don't need to go to all these other places. Like, we're doing it all for you. And then as far as like the decision-making process, Ethena, we are really focused on professional development. So we're all Pavilion members. And then obviously I have not just Pavilion, but Us in Tech, as mentioned before. So I do want to learn more about the buyer's kind of decision-making process as I level up to be account executive. Because right now we're utilizing the Spiced at Ethena. We don't want to utilize Medic just simply because we think that it's very seller focused, whereas Spiced, which is situation, pain, impact, critical event, and then decision, is more so focused on the customer. So yeah, that's kind of like an overarching view. Hopefully y'all are able to follow. I know that was like a lot of word vomit there, but.
No, that was super helpful. And go ahead, Phil. Did you have a question?
No, I said that was great.
Yeah, I mean, what I think would be really helpful maybe for us to kind of level set in terms of like where we could start peeling back a few layers. Right now, you were talking about selling into mid-market. And yes. I guess I'm curious, like that's pretty broad. Do you have like some verticals you go after? And then who are those people you're typically trying to talk to? Because I think then we can help kind of understand, okay, now you're trying to talk to this person in this industry, which maybe the typical pain points, talk tracks, things like that.
Yeah, the vertical is definitely going to be like our harassment prevention training. Just simply because like that is our like baby in a sense, and like all these other trainings kind of like spawned out of that. Right. But it's a really like deep in-depth training. And then as far as like buyer personas or the people I'm reaching out to, VPs of HR, heads of HR, chief people officers, general counsel. Let me go back a little bit. We do 3, it's probably easier to understand in this way. We have 3 different like buckets of buyer persona. So we're going to do people ops. So under that umbrella will be chief people officers, VPs of HRs. Yeah. And then under learning and development is our second bucket. And so we're looking at, the heads of learning and development specialists. And then our third bucket would be general counsel, or like the legal counsel bucket. And yes, in that bucket, we're looking for associate general counsels, chief compliance officers.
So I guess, the next thing I'm wondering, and anybody else can jump in here, but then what I'm hearing there is it's a very horizontal, like you literally can sell to any company within a certain size, because any company pretty much needs this.
Yes, although we do focus on tech companies, like tech companies would be our ideal like ICP. Okay,
so then that narrows it a little bit. So then it's, then you're building out, VP of HR there's thousands of tech companies still, right?
Yeah.
And then would you say, the talk track is the same for, a SaaS startup and any tech company, like the talk track or the way to open that door to a VP of HR is pretty much the same, like it's reusable?
Yeah.
Okay. And are you finding it pretty easy to open that first door, like have that first convo?
Yeah. It's difficult, I would say, with the general counsel, right?
Lawyers don't want to talk to you? Wow, shocking.
Right. Yeah. So I have them on a specific day, which is my Wednesday. And I'm just like, once I, get over the hump. But HR, as we would imagine, they're pretty, open to hearing what I have to say. So I'm usually able to keep them on the phone for maybe like 3 to 5 minutes and have like an initial conversation, even if they're utilizing another platform. Not sure if I answered your question correctly.
No, I think you did. I guess I was almost getting a little tactical there. I'm putting myself in like the day in the life of Mikai. I'm like, okay, I probably am building out or have a sequence built out. I'm going to try and talk to this many people in HR. And what is your method right now? Is it typically like kind of a multi-touch, you've emailed them a few times, then on the phone?
Yeah, absolutely. So I utilize like 3 major avenues. So obviously cold calling, and then email, and then I do social selling. So I'm out here like sending TikToks, to be honest. And the response, as you could imagine, just from like, Vidyard stats and other video platforms, like it is a very good response rate, and, the results are doing well, they're successful. So yeah, I always start with, like, for me, I put majority of my stake in the social selling aspect. I think that that's the easiest way to kind of really make a connection with someone. So like, for instance, if we're talking a sequence, I don't cold call first. I don't cold email first. I send a LinkedIn connection first and try and build that rapport so that you can see my face, that this is a human being, not like a robo-caller, and kind of build that ethos. And then from there, yeah, I am cold calling like maybe 6 or 7 times and sending like a max of 4 emails. And those emails are very creative. Like, we have a lot of creative freedom. At Ethena, I was the first to like usher in using comic books as an email. So like, how about just throw a comic in there of like what we do, and then put the CTA at the end. So that's also garnering a large like success rate as well. So that's like a little bit about I didn't get into KPIs, but that's like kind of my process.
I've actually got a couple quick nuggets that I pulled just from kind of hearing that train of thought. I think one of the traps that we fall into with modern selling is that we do things that we like, that we think are fun, that we think are cool. And then when we get some positive returns, we tend to grasp onto them as evidence that it's the way to go. So like, when you say to me, you're calling it a general counsel, and then that you use comic books, I think,
yeah,
like, I wonder if those general counsel are actually taking those as seriously as you would want to. So and then I also heard you say, I like to call them on Wednesday because that's how I want to deal with it, because I'm in the headspace for me to be ready to get kicked in the head by general counsel. But so what I would urge you to do is to say, first of all, let me differentiate my message for those 3 buckets. What HR wants as a true outcome versus learning and development and general counsel are 3 very different things. Like, their core competency, what keeps them up at night, is very different. So make sure you're tailoring your message, not from a us-centric, this is our typical pain point, but what do you care about? And then try to find out how you can meet them where they are. So your learning and development, they're going to love those TikToks. They're going to love the comic books, but where does my lawyer live? Is he on LinkedIn? Is he in some weird, boring, chat forum that he just found on AOL because they're just now booting up a laptop for the first time? Find out where they live, when they live there, and try to be more specific to the audience, not so much to your preferences.
Jack, I'm sharing this video on that weird chat site on AOL just so that you get the hate mail after.
It's called Craigslist. Is that a thing still?
You're being so harsh on lawyers. I mean, there's anyway, we'll see if any come in the comments later, but all good nuggets. And where I was gonna jump in before that was, it feels like, you've got your outreach sequence, like, and you said this at the beginning. I think I just wanted to kind of understand the journey and your process, if you will. But you're getting the connects, you're getting conversations. But would you say you're kind of sometimes maybe getting stalled? Like, HR gives you some airtime, and then they're like, yeah, but so you're kind of going, okay, how can I turn that conversation into a little bit, like, it's just not, after that it's stalling. So you're opening the door, and then it's like you're just having an awkward conversation in the hallway, and then you both just walk away.
Yes.
Or where's the struggle? I've heard everything very beautiful. Like, it seems like everything is working. So where is the issue, right? Where do you see it's not working?
Yeah, that awkward conversation, like, to get them to the meeting.
Well, because you said it, and I think we had someone on last week, but and no disrespect to HR, but like someone was saying, they are usually quite polite, right? Like, they're willing to take that call, they're willing to empathize and say, yeah, we do kind of have that problem. But then it's like, yeah, you're in the hallway and you both kind of go, okay, now we're going to walk away from each other. Legal just doesn't talk to you, maybe. I'm not sure, or they're tough. L&D, you didn't, maybe they're just like HR, but you're not getting kind of that, okay, where, like, what conversation do we have next? Or and I'm even floundering now, where I'm having the awkward moment, like, Jack, like, maybe help us out here. So, you're talking to that person in L&D, you've identified some of the pain points, but now it's like, okay, well, what do we crack here to kind of go, how do we talk about actually, getting us in, doing a demo, a pilot, like.
Yeah, that's exactly it. What I'm struggling with is like those next steps. And that's where I want to learn about like that kind of like buyer process of getting them to the next step. Because this is a legacy kind of, the industry that we're in is like a legacy thing where people are using these platforms, they've been using them, and it's kind of a check the box solution. So we're really coming in like from left field of like not only getting people to buy something that's more expensive, but like change their schedule as well, because people usually get people compliant in January and then that's it. And we don't do that. We want to train people throughout the year because we're like, these topics matter. You shouldn't just hear about race or DEI one time. So yeah, I really want to like get to like, how do I like push forward? Because what will happen is I cold call someone, they're like, yeah, we're using, so-and-so, and it's working out great. And we've already trained everyone. And so I'm like, okay, well, how do we go forward?
If you look at Spiced, I think that's interesting because Spiced is just spin selling with a few things added on the end. Yes. And I like what they added. Like the critical event is actually what I think you're probably struggling to find, because you can create pain, you can tie pain to impact, but you need the why now. And how do we drive the why now? So what kind of critical events have you heard from some successful conversions, some customers that have moved forward?
Hiring is definitely one, like that's the major thing. Like obviously the Great Resignation is a huge thing right now. So when people are hiring, I notice a lot, that's where we're getting like closed ones, because they want something new. That's and when an employee joins, they don't want to put them through this boring training. That's like an immediate ding, for retention. Another thing would definitely be like Series A, Series Bs, because they're looking to kind of expand now and more eyes are on them. So that's thing number two. And then also to that effect, going public. So a lot of our closed ones have recently become public or are looking to go public within like 6 to 12 months. And obviously, again, like more eyes is going to be another thing. And then the last thing, and I want to be definitely confidential here, but not sharing any names, but when an issue has happened, right? When there has been an issue of harassment or a company's been in the news, they do come and kind of check us out.
So in those cases, I don't want to say there's no uncovering of pain, but they like you said, I think it's very clear. Okay, either in the news or in the investor reports or in press releases, they've said, hey, this is a top priority, or they've kind of highlighted they're trying to make this a priority. So that is a pain point. But back to maybe Jack's piece around timing, if it's a high priority, then you would think there's a need or some urgency. So are you typically able to, like, if you're having that conversation, like, yes, this is an issue, or is your struggle often when all those other pieces haven't really lined up, like they haven't made anything public, it isn't that pressing, and so you're kind of having to create some urgency?
Yes, I would definitely say that creating the urgency. Like I spend a lot of time looking at these companies' code of conduct and 10K reports just to see like where their financial, like if they've gotten a Series A, like where is it going? And then obviously what is listed in their code of conduct as something that they want to focus on. And oftentimes we will find compliance things there. So yeah, I would say that, when the research is available and I'm able to say like, hey, I know you just got this Series A, or like I looked in your code of conduct, like those conversations usually go to the next step. But it's those companies where I'm like trying to create that urgency.
Well, that was kind of the point of my original question, is so that the CE, the critical event's probably missing. So when you're finding yourself struggling, it's missing. But here's probably why. You might either be calling them and they don't have any of those, or you're calling them and it's at the point where it's not out of the bag yet. And that's kind of a touch and go subject because people want to keep that tight. So how can you tailor your calls to try to scratch the surface of that instead of, your value prop? Because if someone has a compliance tool, they're probably like, everything's fine. Well, if I can highlight situations when they thought they were fine and they weren't, and I can see if they're anticipating that might be an issue or it's going on, but it's not public yet. And you can start to ask some questions to surface those, like, for example, I think, the going public, like, hey, look, not a lot of companies are going to disclose early on when they plan on going public, but are you guys talking internally about getting ready to be a public company? And are you starting to make decisions that make it look and feel like you want to be a public company? This is one of those things that if you can anticipate early on, it helps you get there. Have you talked about that? And now you're kind of like pulling those different threads to try to see if you can find that critical event before it's common knowledge.
Am I getting this recording after?
Yeah, of course.
Like
Yeah, we share it. We absolutely share it for sure.
Yeah, I know my team will be really excited to hear this stuff. So yeah, thank you.
And how do you right now manage when they tell you, yeah, no, we already have something, it's working fine. Like what do you say? If we had to play it, like what would you do? If I tell you now we're fine, I have a compliance tool already in place.
Yeah, the first thing that I'm trying to do is find out actually what it is that they're doing. So I'll ask them like, okay, that's great. Like, what is it that you're actually utilizing? And like, what's the feedback been from your employees? Because that's like a big thing that we also focus on is like, you know, the VPs of HR, general counsel, like they'll love it, but their employees hate it. So yeah, that's like the first thing that I'll ask. And then obviously, as soon as they tell me what they're using, like I know my competitors pretty well and kind of like I'm able to surface those pain points. But sometimes, like Jack was saying, like they don't want to give that information. And so we get to like a stall kind of point.
And it sounds like you're doing all the work and the homework on, you know, if you're calling Elaine and, you know, she's at Gong and she's the general counsel and she's on some weird chat site with other lawyers. And, you know, you've looked at all their job postings. Like I'm trying to think of like what else you can use in your arsenal to get all that competitive intel to go, yeah, Elaine, you know, I'm pretty sure, you know, you guys said you use this L&D tool. Like what is it that you could bring to the table that they may not have thought about? Like, you know, we know your employees don't really like it, or typically, you know, what people find is when they're using our tool, there's more engagement, which leads to A, B, C, or D. I'm trying to think of also like the self-serving things that they'd go, yeah, actually that would be nice if we could get that. We don't get it today with our tool, like whether it's, I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but better reporting that we can share with senior leadership or maybe even publicly, like, you know, people take it, or do people actually love this tool and would want to tell more people about it? You know, I'm trying, you know, and I'm sure you have some champions and the stories they can tell, but I mean, those are only going to land with so many other potential customers.
Yeah.
Give me some ideas there too, for sure. Like one other thing to add to that, when you get the, hey, we're all set.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a pain that I've heard from like HR. Well, let me ask you, how often do you find yourself hunting people down that haven't completed the training on time? And how many people exceed the deadlines that you constantly have to remind them? Because that happens to be a sign that the tool doesn't fit the audience. And that's something that we can help you with. So you're solving the problem for HR because they don't want to do that. Like
right.
Now, and here's the hard part. Your end user is not your customer. And I think that's a very important distinction is don't solve end user problems for the buyer, solve buyer problems. And if an end user problem happens to be one, cool, but make sure you're making a distinction between the two.
That's actually really revealing. And now I'm like, want to, you know, kind of like I'm thinking through some of the things that I say. And because we do have like two different scripts. They're like, it's on one page, but for like general counsel versus HR. And I'm just thinking like, I do think that a lot of what I say is like end user problem. Like one of like that question, like, what's the feedback been from your employees? Like I've definitely gotten the response like politely in a, you know, nuanced way. Like, I don't care what they think. Like they don't have to worry about, you know, if the IRS or not IRS, but, you know, if the EEOC comes, you know, crashing down on us. Right. So yeah, that's really revealing.
With, you know, it's making me think back to, I've sold a learning management solution before. And in many cases for organizations, it was about covering their ass. So they were just like, we want to make sure this many people take it so that if they do something incriminating, we're not culpable. So yeah, my guess is we're really picking on lawyers today, but that's really all they care about is like, check, like have all these boxes been checked. They don't care about the experience. They're like, we don't care if it's like the worst training on earth. Will we get sued?
Right.
And there's probably a nicer way to say that to them or sell that to them. But, you know, like, I'm wondering, like, back to Jack's kind of example there, if I was calling on Filip and he had that stiff lawyer look like he does now, you know, I'd be like, you know, if you've had any diversity, or those, that's not the right word, but what would you call them? Incidences? There's probably a polite way of talking around that. Have you had the information to prove that you've done, and there's probably legalese talk here, but that you've done all that you can or that you should have as an organization to train up your employees so that you're, you know, have less exposure. And I'm just trying to think what talk track they'd even be willing to open up and say, yeah, actually we're that's somewhere where we're kind of weak. And maybe there's somebody like in the sphere of the legal counsel that would open up and help you understand. Like, I feel like if we could pull in somebody who's worked with the legal counsel into this chat here, it would be helpful, because they might be, this is the angle you want to take with legal counsel, because they're probably going to be very guarded.
Yes. Yeah.
Have you tried driving with other trainings instead of, like, leave this one kind of in the back pocket and saying, you know, I know our compliance training is like the top training, but even maybe not mention it at the beginning and start with some others that might be, I don't know, let's call them less boring or less, you know, obligatory. I don't know what kind of other trainings you have, but maybe try to just drive with something different and do it for a week or two and see where the conversations go, and then kind of compare, doing something totally different.
So Phil, you're saying kind of more or less focus more on, you know, my product, but hey, how, like, just tell me more about what's not working with what you've got today.
No, I'm saying because Mikai, how do you say?
Yeah, Mikai.
Mikai. Yeah, you mentioned you have all these other trainings that. So are there? Could you drive with those?
Yes, and I actually have been trying that. I just tried it like right before Halloween, and it's been working. So my org just wants me to prove a little bit more with stats that you know, that can be the driver. So what I'll do is definitely continue to do that, because I've noticed that when I talk about anti-bribery and corruption training, like, they're all ears. Harassment prevention, they're like, talk to people ops, and they're clicking, you know? So yeah, and we also did just get anti-bribery and corruption. So that was like a little logistical thing that actually just released like the end of last month. So we're, you know, fast making all of these trainings, but I do think that there is going to be a shift at Ethena of, like, we don't talk to general counsel about harassment prevention. And if it comes up in conversation, that's great, but like making our verticals more clear. Full transparency, we're like full startup, like vibes, like, like just like, you know, figuring out as we go.
That's cool. Elaine, you were gonna jump in.
Yeah, I was just gonna build on a point that Jack mentioned earlier, to look at the successful conversion. Like, you look at the successful use cases that where in the past you have customers that have decided to use your product and, you know, over your competitors. So I guess, like, when you're cold calling, I would suggest like starting the call with saying that, hey, you know, the reason why I'm reaching out is because I see your role, and we are helping other customers in your space. And, you know, they usually run into these pain points, and ask them if that's like relevant or does that resonate. And if yes, you can go into like pitching your product. Or if not, you can, you know, go into like more discovery and see what exactly it is that they're kind of, I guess, like using, or like, I don't know what questions you normally ask, but basically get them to open up more. And another point I would say in terms of like, I guess, like competitors, is that sometimes I don't know. I mean, I like to address it right at the beginning of the call. I would say that, hey, you know, so-and-so, I noticed that you are a competitor. You're using you're a competitor shop. And I know that there's nothing like fancy or like any like win stats I can pull over the phone, or any like Jedi mind tricks I can pull over the phone. But I do guarantee that there are some good reasons as to why customers like you have upgraded to our platform. And, you know, why like 8 out of 10, if you can pull some stats, I like to say, you know, I do guarantee that there are some good reasons as to why 8 out of 10 customers have chosen us over, you know, XYZ competitors. And, you know, how may I earn some time to kind of show you what that looks like? So yeah, that's just.
I like that last piece. It's like, little bit of like curiosity, right? You're like, well, yeah, if 8 out of 10, I am curious. But to the earlier point, right? I don't know. I'm sure we've all heard these different analogies, but it's like people relate more to that storytelling, but also kind of like subconsciously, almost like trying to make them a hero in a story. Like, hey, this other customer, you know, became kind of a hero internally because they did all these great things, and they can kind of like visualize that, like, oh yeah, if I could do that. So creating that storyline of, hey, we could make you a hero.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
last line, by the way, is so powerful on such a subtle level, because every single cold caller in the world is calling and saying, I know your problem, I have the answer, and I need you to believe me right now. But that's not the point of a cold call. The cold call is to say, I think this is worth talking about. Can we do that? Those are two very different approaches. And what Elaine said there was, hey, look, how can I earn your time to prove it? And they're thinking, in their head, they're thinking, well, like, why would I even want you to try to prove it? What are you trying to prove? They have to ask you questions. And if they do that, they've just given you permission to enter a dialogue. And like, now you're totally there. One thing I thought of, and I'm not a marketer, but sometimes I get crazy ideas when we're talking about competitors and you're talking about all these trainings. What is the point of DE&I? And DE&I is not a box checking mechanism.
Right.
We're trying to shift culture. So one of the things that you can say when someone has a competitor is like, look, are you checking boxes or are you moving needles? And do you care? If you're a box checker and you've got a thing that checks this box, you're good. But if you want to move a needle, how can I earn the time to show you how? Like, that's a whole different, now you're reframing how they look at training, especially the compliance boring training. So, and if you can get that reframe and someone's bought in, that's a pretty good qualifier that they're an audience you want to talk to. So it might help you weed out the people that don't care as much. So they're not telling you, we don't care in so many ways.
I like that one, because I think you could even lead with, and it could seem really, I don't know about arrogant, but like, if you just want to check boxes, then we can end the call now.
Yeah.
And who's going to say no? We just, you know what I mean? Like,
I'm going to check the box on this cold call and we're going to call it a day. Like,
no, I mean, I'd say 9 out of 10 would be like, oh no, we want to move the needle because that's the right thing to say. But they may not actually.
Why aren't you? Then why aren't you? Because it doesn't feel like you just said to me you are. Like, you can feel that in their tone.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, driving with this culture, I think like companies like Gong, and Elaine probably can confirm it, like they really care about that everything they do is fun. So even if it's a compliance training, then it has to be fun. Like they cannot put like a boring compliance training. And then, you know, driving with this culture of fun and box checking, and like kind of disrupting this, that, you know, like I know it's super boring and most of the companies do the compliance training once a year, but you know, our customers, they have an ongoing training for the whole year, and we changed it. We disrupted that. It's a monthly learning. I was just reading the website, and it's like, it says like your people never receive the same training. It's like continuous learning. So it's not just like people, you know, watching YouTube while doing the compliance training, because that's what usually happens, right? It's just, okay, what's it? I don't know if there's any test that they have to pass or anything.
Yeah.
So it's more like, again, like we would talk about users, but try to talk about in the language of the buyers, right? Like the culture is really important. This cannot be boring, because you are going public, raising round, like you're this fun company, everybody's talking about you. Like make it about them. Like, hey, I see your company name all over LinkedIn. Like, all the employees seem pretty engaged. So, you know, I thought, you know, I would call you because I see you everywhere, right? You know, not every company, but I think you're targeting this kind of companies like Chili Pipers and you know, Outreaches and Gongs and all those.
I like that. I see you everywhere.
Well, and in my notes I had, and sorry, Elaine, were you going to speak up? You okay? I had Netflix, like when you were kind of introducing yourself, that really stuck out for me. I was like, oh, I've done a lot of training, and I hate to admit it, like Filip said, a lot of it's been going on in the background, and I'm like, okay, it's done. Next, done. Next. I can't ever tell you I've done training, and I was like, it was kind of like watching Netflix. Like I wanted to watch the next episode. That's never happened.
Mhm.
I was going to say that I love that analogy as well. It's very relatable and relevant because, you know, in the pandemic, everyone's watching, probably spending a lot of time watching Netflix. And I think that would stick with people.
Or if you're, you know, and not what we're trying to re-engineer your script, right? But if the Netflix thing's called, you know, you could get fun with it too, right? You could say it, you know, is your, yeah, you might think your training's like, you know, Netflix, but is it, you know, is it like Tiger King? Is it like whatever the coolest show is? But, you know, just to like break the ice. But I'm also wondering like what's the origin story? Because I find sometimes of Ethena, because I find sometimes like that'll resonate, like, hey, our founder was doing diversity training and was like, this is insane. And this is why they did it. And so sometimes, you know, if you're talking to a startup, sometimes they really want to hear that, like, we're a startup too. And so you could probably pull some of those threads.
Yeah. Our story is really incredible, actually founded by two badass women, Roxanne Petraeus and Ann Solmson. And if you are, you know, a fan of government, Roxanne Petraeus will ring a bell for you. Legal general counsels, they love to, you know, hear about that. But she was in the Army veteran, and yeah, the training was terrible. So, you know, she was like, there has to be something better than this. Went to work, you know, with McKinsey and Company. And she was like, wow, this is even worse. I can't believe like these people are also taking the training. And so, you know, met up with Anne. They're both Harvard graduates, and then developed, like, thus Ethena was born. And it was really birthed out of this idea of, let's create a training that people actually want to do, because like, why would you spend all of these hours checking the box on something and then you still have to worry about the EEOC or an audit happening because your people really didn't retain any information? So yeah,
I mean, that was honestly, I enjoyed that. Like I that to me kind of pulled me in. I was like, I'd love to be a customer of those two people because they sound like they want to change the world. But one other thing jumped out at me, and I'd love to hear what everybody else thinks the right term or vernacular would be, because I think training feels like it's forced or being kind of done to you. And I think you guys may have other terms, but it's like, we want to like educate you, or there's probably a better way of phrasing it, but you know what I mean? Like, this isn't, because I don't know about everyone else, but when I hear training, it's not a positive sentiment.
Yeah, we actually say nudges, but I've noticed, this is just like some feedback for myself and team, and we're really feedback focused company, but we haven't been using nudges often. And I think that that's because people, what was happening is that they didn't understand that training was like, the nudge was a training. We would always get the question like, well, what is a nudge? So I would be more than open to hearing like what y'all think would be like a better way to describe this. We also say content, but yeah, I think that you like pressed on a good point.
I think the culture thing is big. Jack brought that up earlier, the moving the needle, right? I would kind of focus on, this is around changing your culture. And part of me is almost like pull away from learning, because I think now you're putting yourself in the same category as all the other ones. And you guys, frankly, even from what I'm hearing, is you're saying you're not even in the same category. You're helping get that box checked, but you're actually in a totally different category.
Well, and careful here, because we're doing it again, where if you're a CMO and you're creating the vision and you're going to drive demand and create this new market around this word, I'd say let's go down this road.
Yeah.
But if you haven't yet defined that category, you call someone and you say, hey, we're doing nudges. And like, the heck's a nudge?
Nudge,
like,
exactly.
Yeah, you're going to nudge me off the edge if you call me again.
Right.
So
that's why I don't say it.
Get into your customer. I would call your customers and say, hey, when I called you, you know, first of all, why'd you take the call? Like, get that data. But what language resonates with you? And I would break those customers down to those three buckets. Hey, HR, hey, people, what language are you using internally? Because a lot of companies are creating their own cool vernacular, but then those things kind of pick up and they become trends. So like people ops was never a thing before.
Right.
So, but if you called into a company and you're like, what are you calling HR of the future? They're like, oh, we're all calling it people ops. It's like a thing. People are going to this weird conference and they're changing their name to people ops.
Yeah.
Right down the hall from the lawyers in that weird chat room. But call them and ask them, like, what is the vernacular or the language that you're using to describe this? And then start putting that into your messaging.
And I think I have an idea, because now that you told us the story, like, for me it was really compelling. Because think about it, I'm pretty sure that most HR VPs are woman, very educated, probably with PhDs. So I think the story of two amazing women, Harvard alumni, trying to change the world, and you're on a mission that you joined them because you really believe you're on a mission, and you join those two amazing women changing the world and making compliance and harassment training fun. I just checked their LinkedIn, and I think it can be, you should use it in the cold call. Like, tell the story. Like, I'm not just calling from another startup, or like, I'm on a mission here. We're changing the world.
Will you join me?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Make it fun. I mean,
we're changing the world one boring compliance training at a time, right? And then they're like, wait, how are you going to do that?
Yeah.
I love that, Philip.
But I think you brought up a good point earlier, Jack, and I agree with that, Philip. I think that'll really resonate. But I think what you were saying around, it's easy to kind of maybe think, hey, let's use some new cool words. But if they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. So the other thing it made me think of is like one question I like asking a customer is, and I realize you're doing a lot of outbound, you may get some inbound, or the talking to the customers is great, but what was the compelling event that made you pick up the phone and find us or email us? I'd love to hear that, because I'm like what got you to that edge where you're like, okay, this is enough. Like, we have an L&D platform, but it's just not working. Like that to me is really helpful. Or why do you keep opening my emails? Like, maybe you have some of that data, or what, or is it, if you have some of that data, or why did you fill out the form, or if there's anything that you've been kind of getting them to nibble on, that maybe it's the TikToks, or why aren't you answering my emails? Like, what is it that just doesn't interest you?
There's a good way to go find that stuff too, without having to wait for the customer. And you're listening into a lot of your personas on LinkedIn Navigator. So HR specifically, they're going to a ton of events, and whether they're virtual or in person, grab a bunch of those recordings. And, that's just as good as listening to an annual report, because that's where the language and the lexicon changes. It's at major industry events. So nudge theory is a thing, but only if you've read the books. But it's not big in the conference scene yet.
Right.
So what is it? They're all talking about the Great Resignation. Well, what are the 3 key points that are coming out of the Great Resignation that are becoming priorities of HR departments? You can find them there at those events, and then you can turn around and deliver that same messaging. And they're like, when you call and you say it, they're like, it's like she's in my head. I just did this webinar. I just saw this thing, and it starts to resonate with them.
Yeah. The biggest thing that I'm taking away from this is like the storytelling aspect, and also like selling the way that people actually want to buy. Right. I think that I've definitely been selling the way that I want to sell, which is it's definitely a case of like the newbies, the newbie of being an SDR. But yeah, this is just really revealing. I apologize if I'm not, I feel like y'all are giving me so much, and I'm kind of like soaking in, but
cool.
I think that the storytelling aspect, like opening a call like that, would actually be more natural to me. And I think that that's like where I may have like said it in the incorrect manner. But what I mean by that is like, selling via social selling, I just want to sell in the most natural way, like for people, because I'm not selling to a robot, I'm selling to a person. And so that's why it's important for me to like show this person, like, I'm also a fellow human being. Like, these are the things that I'm interested in, like even outside of work, So yeah, I think the storytelling aspect for me is like a major takeaway. And to all of y'all, you may be like, yeah, no duh. But like, to me, it's just like, I'm kind of like in a whirlwind of why wasn't I doing that before? So.
Okay. Also, one more thing I would recommend here. I think when I first started as an SDR, I actually sat down with my manager and I said, hey, like, I know these are a list of buyer personas that we have at Gong, but I want to know, can we just go through, talk about the role and talk about the pain points that they have. That way, when I talk to them, I kind of understand their world more and I can speak to the pain. And I think what I found too from cold calling is that when I'm able to find pain, the meeting conversion rate is like much higher, because even in the email follow-up, I can say, hey, you know, last week we talked, you told me that you're really struggling with X, Y, and Z. We're really excited to, you know, show you, blah, blah, blah. Like, so I think that's one very helpful exercise that I would recommend if you haven't done it already. If you have, great. So yeah.
No,
How many are you doing discovery, or are you handing it off to an AE to do discovery?
I am handing it off to my AE, but I do try to pain funnel on the cold calls too. I would try to find some pain. That way my AE is already caught up when he's.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So Mikai, how about you? Are you?
Yeah, it's the exact same way. Yeah.
So I would actually urge you to listen to more Gong calls. And if you don't have Gong, you need it. Shameless plug.
I've been telling the team, you just got to get a little bit.
It's
bigger,
like cheap.
but...
It's like cheap. It's like $150 a head, and Elaine will give you a discount. But anyways, what you need to do is you need to listen to calls of your AEs, not of your fellow SDRs.
Yeah.
And here's what I see a lot of SDR teams doing. They're like, let me listen to the best SDR. Well, they're still converting at like single digit, barely double digit percentages. And it's because they're focused on what they know, but they're missing the part of the funnel where they're actually hearing those pains come out from the genuine standpoint of the customer. Mm-hmm. So I would say, like, try to listen to more of the discovery calls so that you can hear the pain come out naturally. And then you take those conversations that you hear and those turn into your stories. Hey, I was just listening to this call with this general counsel from this kind of company yesterday, and they're dealing with X. Is that something you guys are addressing right now? Or, you know, can I give you some time back in your day? And they're like, nope, yeah, we've got that problem. Like, what are you going to do about it? Now you have your conversation.
Stories are the best. Like, if you can talk stories, like the more you listen to calls of what Jack is saying, like people don't like this boring, like, you know, pain. And like, I talk to many companies. Okay, what companies? Who did you talk yesterday? What story can you tell me? And you say, you know, I just talked, you know, to the guy on Netflix and blah, blah. You can even throw names. I think it's not like that confidential. You're doing cold calls, so whatever. I mean, but stories are always great. And like the best salespeople I've seen, they always like, they have tons of stories. And like, wow, dude, like how do you have? I remember when I was like 20 and I was listening to my, you know, all their colleagues, and they're always having all these stories. I'm like, how do you have all these stories? And now I understand. You know, they had like 10 years of experience, and they just talk to a lot of people.
Or you can listen to a story and retell it. There's nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, I tell stories that are not mine. They're our stories that I've gotten pretty good at regurgitating them. And you can create a story too without telling a lie. I think people think that creative storytelling is a lie, but what you can do is, hey, customer that looks and feels like you went through situation that is highly likely to happen to them based on things I know. And they did something that I've seen relatively close to happen and got this outcome. You can make that story up, throw in names, throw up industries, and it still is relatable because someone goes, that feels like me. I believe that could happen to me. And that even though the story might not have happened, doesn't make it not true. It's still the realm of possibility. Well, and would you say if you want to like be super, super safe with that approach, Jack, you could kind of go, you know, let's paint a picture or tell a story of you know, a hypothetical customer, and you use that formula. If it resonates, like you said, they don't really care if it's science fiction. They're like, that sounds like a pain I have, and you just told me how to solve it. Let's keep talking. But I want to go back to, like, you were talking, because it sounds like, you know, you're opening doors. You got some feedback today, which is great on like getting them more excited. But that hallway conversation, you were still saying is like there's still an awkward like end to it. And I guess I didn't completely understand. You're handing that, like, is the goal in those to hand off to your AE a meeting?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's like you ring the bell, kind of, and that's you're having trouble getting that. Like they're like, oh, it was nice talking to you, but you're not getting the meeting.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things we've revealed is like there can be a little bit more research being done on like the SDR front, because we really don't know when we have an account who is going to handle compliance, right? But I don't think that should be an excuse, right? So we should still like try and find a way to overcome that. But I would say that awkward hall conversation is more so they're like, okay, well, I don't handle this, or we've already kind of covered how to push forward. They say they've got something, but sometimes it's an awkward conversation because it's like, oh, I don't handle this. It's like, okay, well, like who does handle this? Can I get that intro, like that kind of like referral pushing forward as well?
Interesting. So they're happy to listen, but then they don't really want to introduce you to the next person or open another door, or they're polite, but they're kind of ending it there.
Right. Or it's like they are handling it, like they are a part of it. And that's like the kind of tricky part that we're trying to figure out, is that all three of those personas do handle this, like in some manner. Some just may handle it more than the other. So oftentimes when I do call legal counsel and they're like, yeah, like people ops handles that, I know for a fact, because every single close one goes through the procurement process. The legal counsel, they have to give a check off on it. So it will come to on their plate at some point. But yeah, that's kind of like the other side of that awkward hall conversation.
I'm just wondering go ahead, Elaine, go ahead. No, go.
Oh, I was just going to ask a quick follow-up question. So Mikai, when they say that to you, how do you overcome that objection? When they say, hey, people ops, go reach out to them. I'm not the right person that you should talk to.
Yeah, I usually say, totally understand. In the past, I do know that general counsels, this does come on their plate at some point. So that's why I figured I'd get you, involved in the conversation pretty early on. But would you be okay with me being passed on to, someone on your people ops team who handles this better? That's like kind of how I would navigate it.
I think that's a good way of navigating it, but I think I would instead of asking about the people ops like question, and then I would just reverse and ask another question about like their role, like or their focus today, so that you can just keep the conversation going. Because when it comes to objections like that, you just have to brush through and just keep going. You can't just say, oh, okay, well, who should I talk to within people ops? Like that's, I guess like what we do here, we try to get 3 no's on a cold call before letting the prospect go. I mean, it might be a little aggressive, but that's like a little like philosophy that I try to stick to when I'm cold calling.
Interesting.
And I think that, to your point, when you say like, oh, okay, well, give me to someone who matters, like that's what you're really saying.
Right.
And like cold calls are funny because they're like, you build this like sensitive relationship, right? Mm-hmm. And what happens is it's like pulling an elastic, and the tighter you can pull that elastic, the better. But what happens is you say something like that, it snaps. And now you've lost that like tightrope of trust that you've built, and that tension, because they're like, oh, they don't care. I thought they cared. Now I'm in the opposite, because now I know they just wanted to get to the right person, and that's not me. Right. So yeah, be super careful with that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you can also say, I mean, sometimes I do a little like reverse psychology that we mentioned earlier. I would say, oh, so would you say that when it comes to the decision-making process, that you don't have any sort of influence? And then they would say, oh, no, I do. I have influence. And then that's where you keep going.
Jack's going, I don't know, the elastic must snap a couple times when you say that.
No, that elastic shot right back. I like that. They're like, wait a minute. Like, what are you talking about? Well, I got all the power.
What I was thinking is maybe almost like trying to give them like, not like explain the process, but go, I totally understand that. Here's who else I'm going to talk to within your organization. Somebody from this group, somebody from this group. I'm pretty sure I'm just going to come back and end up having to talk to you too. So, we can have some of that discussion now, or I know you're a decision maker, and they might kind of go whatever, or they might go, yeah, let's just have that conversation now. Like, you are going to talk to 3 people. So almost like an assumptive close, like, hey, I'm going to have to talk to you anyway.
And just tell them the way it is. Like you said, telling stories. Sorry about the child. Tell them stories, right? Like, hey, typically what our customers do is they end up bringing in this and this person. Like, what are those dynamics like for you? And then just like sit back and shut up. And like, sometimes they'll give you the keys to the castle, and they'll tell you like, well, this person has the budget, but this person really owns it. And then I have to do this. And now you're like, oh, cool. I just got my whole account mapped in like 2 minutes.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're more specific, like, well, that's cool. I'm going to talk to John in people ops, and then Larry or Mary in HR, and they'll probably send me back to you. And they might be like, oh, John and Mary don't know anything. Talk to me.
Yeah.
That's what you're hoping, right? Yes. I know we're 3 minutes from the top of the hour. Is there anything else you want to ask? I mean, I know we kind of bounced around, and I think it's been fun, and it sounds like it's been helpful.
No, it's been extremely helpful. I don't have so much as a question, but I just want to honestly just take the moment to thank everyone so much for their time. Like, just absorbed as much as possible. Got like 5 pages of notes here. And I'm one of those people who actually goes through their notes. So my CEO called me out on the other day. She was like, what are you writing down? I see you always writing. I'm like, at the end of my day, I go through these notes and really take out the gems. But no, this has just been really incredible. Like I said, I didn't really have any expectations like coming in. So I didn't know if I was going to have to like be giving it for like, delineating information. So yeah, it worked out well.
We always set the bar really low, and then we always exceed expectations.
Yes. Yeah.
And Elaine, I got you. Just remember, if you had Gong, you wouldn't have to take all those.
I feel
you
like
don't have to take notes anymore.
I feel like there should,
take it for you.
I feel like somebody should be giving a referral code or something at the end of this call. It's like Elaine's like, seriously, did you?
Jack, I feel like I should be paying you.
To just use promo code Jack to pay full price and actually buy the software.
Jack 20.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm happy to give people a couple minutes back. I know it's a Friday. I'll share the screen capture and tag everybody here on LinkedIn, and I'll share the recording. So, and I'm sure it goes without saying, like, don't hesitate to reach out to any of us individually. Like if you want to maybe test a talk track or something, 99% of the folks that come on here, like it just, we carry on after this. So I appreciate you putting yourself on the hot seat, and everybody here taking time out to help out Mikai. So thanks everyone.
Yeah, thank you all.
I would love to see some of those TikToks, and maybe if you want to send us your sequence or something, happy to give you feedback.
Yeah.
I'll send them to my lawyer.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. Thanks so much.
All. Have a great weekend.
Thanks a lot.
Take care.